Hello everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Developing a Deep House track. This is the second Deep House track that I have streamed the production of, and it started with one of the library of Deep House bass lines I made a few weeks back, and sort of had those as the beginning points of creating this track. For those of you that are coming along live, thanks for being here today. Certainly welcome to the stream. And if you're catching this afterwards, thanks for the view. Certainly appreciate you coming along. So for those that have been with the last couple of streams, you'll know that I created a library full of Deep House bass lines. And I just randomly I didn't randomly chose two. I chose two that I thought went together pretty well. So this was number one. And then number two was this. And we've already done a little bit of work. By the way, forgive my voice. I'm getting over a cold. It's not the COVID, but I am recovering from a bit of a cold and some sinuses, so forgive the raspy voice. But we've got several parts of the track already sort of underway. I started with this bass line, and I ended up adding some percussion and some hats, which I thought were kind of unique and a little bit different to go in a deep house track, but I think still worked. Adding in the kick snare, the snare clap and kick. That's kind of the basic groove of the track. Now I've added a guitar part, which is actually, I have 3-tracked me playing guitar. I've got 2 exact tracks, and then I used a different guitar to lay down some longer sustains. So these are a little more staccato. And then I dual track that, and then I added one that's got a little bit more sustain to it. And then put the 3 of them together, which I thought made a pretty nice sound. I'm not a very talented guitar player. That was my dad, who was a great guitar player. I just know my way around the neck a little bit and can make it make sounds. That's about it. But so in context, and we had thrown that on top of a kind of a soulful piano. Some nice suspended chords, some 7ths, some 4ths. And all together. Now, I have also added to this a couple of potential melody ideas. So I've got some instrumental melody ideas, but I've also been working on some of the vocal melody ideas. And I'm going to share those tonight. So the first instrumental is a simple pluck. And the idea of this is to keep it relatively simple and easy to follow, and probably maybe use that in a breakdown or something along those lines. Then I've got a more complex pluck, which I put on top of the guitar, and this could be in a busier section, more like a, sort of a chorus or a drop. So it's heavily delayed, but I think it sounds pretty cool sitting on top. Even if I end up sitting that behind a vocal. Then I've got a third one that I'm working on, which is more of a kind of a saw pad, but it's got a little bit more of a sing-songy feel to it. And something that happened actually in putting this one together. I had originally had it with just this these two instruments here, which were both originally presets, which I tweaked out pretty heavily, but the Endearing was the original. And I added this square to give it a little oomph down below. But I felt like it was still kind of missing a little bit of punch at the front. So I put another synth on here. And humorously, you can hear that I'm using some pitch bend. So some of the notes are actually I'm starting the bend prior to when the note's supposed to get there, which presented a little bit of a challenge because that pluck would end up playing at the very top of this. So rather than break it all out, what I did with the pluck actually was took the pluck and then just threw a delay on there so that I effectively shifted the pluck back just a little bit, 24 milliseconds, which is not a lot, but it's enough that you can't really hear it too much on the notes where it isn't being slid up. And for those where it is being slid up with the glide, it actually moved the note back to where it hits close enough that you can't really hear the difference. So check this out with and without this little delay. So you can hear it kind of feels rushed in several spots. So then I put the delay on. And that just kind of relaxes it just a little bit so that it then sits in the pocket. And then they come together as a nice sound overall. And then that click at the top is not really overbearing and it's not late, but it's also not so early like it was. Now, pardon me, that, for the bass line here, I actually did use a progression this time, rather than just keeping it all on effectively one note. So, what you've got here is you're going to start on the G, and we move up to the B flat here. So we're really running up to my major third, right, because we're in a minor key. So this is all really B flat. And then we come down to A, so we're going 2, and then really we're modulating up to 5 up here, and then back to 1. So it is a little bit more of a walking progression than you hear in a lot of dance music, but I wanted to, because we're, this is effectively a deep house track, I've got a little bit, I think, latitude to be a little bit more musical with it. So the challenge for that, of course, was trying to find a vocal sample that was going along with it. And in this track in particular, I started by writing the music rather than writing the music into the vocal. So I did a bunch of sampling of a bunch of the vocals that I've got. And I'm going to use some for texture for sure. So something like that I'm going to use for texture. I was thinking about something like this for clips, but, for little chops, but that's really not much. Then I got another one that I think is, it sounded a little bit too aggressive, not perfect, but something I was playing with. I ran across this one. Oops, that one I haven't actually put in tune, so let me see about this one. Yeah, this one looks like it. So I was playing along with this one. I didn't really love this one either. But then I found this right here.
Tried this, tried that, tried everything. Coming right back. Won't you wait for me? I need you to stay right there. I'm coming right away, my dear.
And although that's not a perfect fit for the progression, there's a couple of notes that are in that melody tone that aren't specifically in the progression, but they almost work like leading tones, so they've almost led into the next chord. So I think there's maybe one or two notes that I didn't really cotton to, but for the most part, I think that worked pretty well. Now, it would also turn out that sound, I think, is a little too aggressive for this track, so I was EQing this out so it's a little bit... Now, I also would probably turn off the lead instrument while the vocal's playing. So. So that was vocal number 1, and then I was playing with... I was trying to see if I wanted to chop it up and maybe gate it and throw some, more traditional chops on there. I also experimented with trying to do a low formant, put it down an octave. And I don't really hate that. I think that could be pretty cool. And in fact, if you put that together with this, there might be something to do with that, which I'll lean into and look at over the next session or two. But one of the funny parts was while I was doing the chopping, I also threw it into a simpler. And did some just straight up edits, grab chops and see if we could make something interesting come out of it. And if you'll recall here, I've got 2 bass lines. I've got the main bass line here. And then I've also selected a bass line for the break. Which I kind of like the way that break works, where it kind of sounds, kind of dirty, and I put kind of a more interesting percussion on top. Now, while I was playing with the chops, though, I ran across this. And although that's not perfect, and it really sounds dead ups like some of the stuff from the 80s, I like the idea of that a lot. So this may end up leading itself towards almost a chorus, if not just the break. But then in the same pack of this singer here from Bright Lights, I also found this. So I'll let this play for a second. And I actually really like the way those two things play off each other a little bit there, with the long, sustained vocal and then the chops sitting sort of below that, chopping away. So I think that's where we're going to be heading with this track. I think I'm going to use these samples here from the Bright Lights pack, which I pulled off of Splice. I think that we will end up with a relatively musical, kind of almost groovy, soulful main section of the track, but then this may end up being the chorus, or maybe just sort of a dirty break that goes on top. So I think that's where we're headed. We certainly could make a shift or two as we move along, but this is where it's at right now. Certainly appreciate anybody who's come along tonight. I'm going to check and see. I don't think I've got anybody on tonight, but that's okay. If you're catching this afterwards, certainly appreciate your views. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great day.
Yeah.